Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful tales of courage, resilience, and the human spirit. In today's story, we follow Rebecca Carter, a strong and determined FBI director, as she faces an unjust confrontation with a police officer on a quiet suburban night. This encounter quickly escalates into a moment that exposes deep-seated systemic issues but also becomes a testament to standing firm for justice and integrity. Join us as we uncover Rebecca's journey of bravery and her unwavering fight against abuse of power. Subscribe to our channel to begin today's story and be inspired by the lessons it brings. The sleek, black SUV moved gracefully down the dimly lit streets of Arlington, Virginia. The evening was quiet, with only the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional murmur of distant traffic accompanying its journey. Inside, Rebecca Carter leaned back against the plush seat, savoring the stillness after an exhausting day. Rebecca wasn't just any professional, she was the director of the FBI, a position that demanded unrelenting vigilance and carried the weight of the nation's security on her shoulders. But tonight, her thoughts weren't occupied with classified cases or matters of national importance. All she wanted was to get home, have a simple meal, and immerse herself in the comfort of a good book. The road was almost deserted, with just a few scattered headlights breaking the soft darkness. Rebecca's headlights illuminated the asphalt, the rhythmic hum of the tires almost hypnotic. It was one of those rare moments of peace that she cherished deeply. Then, in an instant, the tranquility shattered. A sharp flash of red and blue lights filled her rearview mirror, accompanied by the unmistakable wail of a police siren. She frowned, a mixture of confusion and irritation surfacing. Her speed was well within the limit, and she hadn't missed any signs. Why was she being stopped? Reluctantly, she guided her SUV to the side of the road and brought it to a halt. A moment later, the silhouette of a tall man emerged from the patrol car, his boots crunching against the gravel as he approached. Rebecca lowered her window, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the approaching officer. His badge glinted under the streetlight, his uniform pristine, and his expression hard and dismissive. The name on his tag read James Mitchell. Without so much as a polite greeting, he leaned down and scanned the vehicle with a cold, calculating gaze. "You were stopped for security reasons," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. Rebecca straightened in her seat, her calm demeanor masking the annoyance that simmered beneath. "Security reasons?" she asked, her voice even but firm. "Is there an issue with me or my vehicle?" Mitchell didn't answer directly. Instead, he barked, "Show me your vehicle registration and driver's license." Years of navigating high-pressure situations had taught Rebecca the importance of composure. She hesitated for only a moment before reaching into the glove compartment. As she handed over the requested documents, she noticed Mitchell barely glanced at them before retreating to his patrol car. Left alone in the silence, her thoughts began to race. This wasn't new to her. Rebecca Carter had faced prejudice throughout her life and career. Being a woman of color in a field dominated by men had meant constantly proving her worth. Even as the FBI director, she wasn't immune to the sting of discrimination. But something about this encounter felt different, more personal, more hostile. A few minutes later, Mitchell returned, holding her documents loosely. "I need you to show me your ID," he demanded, his tone sharper this time. Rebecca raised an eyebrow, her calm exterior concealing the frustration that was building. "My registration and driver's license are valid. I've done nothing wrong. Why are you asking for additional identification?" Mitchell crossed his arms, a smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. "You have a suspicious attitude," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "A car like this, someone like you, it doesn't add up." Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain composed. The implication in his words was clear, and it was an affront she had encountered too often. "Suspicious attitude," she echoed, her voice measured. "What exactly are you basing that on?" Mitchell shrugged dismissively. "Nothing special," he muttered. But I'm in charge here. If you don't hand over your ID, I have every right to take you to the station. Rebecca tightened her grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't just an ordinary traffic stop, it was a blatant abuse of power. Yet, she knew she couldn't let her emotions get the better of her. "Sir," she began, her voice steady but firm, "your request is illegal. I've provided all the documentation required by law. Unless you have a valid reason, I won't present additional identification." Mitchell's expression darkened. "Don't tell me how to do my job," he sneered. "People like you shouldn't challenge authority." The words hit like a blow. But Rebecca didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze head-on. "I'm not challenging your authority," she said, her voice unwavering. "I'm asking you to exercise it properly. What you're doing right now is an abuse of power, and it could get you into serious trouble." Mitchell leaned closer, his presence looming. "Trouble?" he mocked. "You don't scare me. Who do you think you are to talk to me like that?" For a moment, Rebecca paused, her sharp eyes locked on his. "Someone who knows the law better than you do," she replied coolly. The tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unspoken animosity. Rebecca had encountered men like Mitchell before, those who wielded their authority like a weapon, driven by insecurity or prejudice. She knew the situation could spiral further if she wasn't careful. But she also knew she couldn't back down. This wasn't just about her, it was about standing up to systemic abuse and proving that justice and integrity could prevail, even in the face of ignorance and hostility. The sharp chill of the night air seeped through the open window of Rebecca's SUV as Officer Mitchell's demeanor grew increasingly hostile. His words hung in the air, heavy with arrogance and disdain, and Rebecca could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She took a steadying breath, her mind racing as she calculated her next move. "Officer Mitchell," she began, her voice calm but edged with steel, "I've complied with every legal requirement. What you're doing now is harassment. And it's illegal." Mitchell's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. "Harassment? You think this is harassment?" He leaned closer, his posture radiating a dangerous combination of contempt and authority. "Let me tell you something. Out here, I'm the law. And if you don't cooperate, I'll make sure you regret it." Rebecca felt her heart rate spike. But her exterior remained composed. She had faced far worse threats in her career, negotiating with hardened criminals and diffusing high-stakes crises. A man like Mitchell, hiding his insecurity behind a badge, would not intimidate her. Still, the sight of his hand hovering dangerously close to his holstered gun sent a chill down her spine. "Using force against someone who has done nothing wrong only proves my point," she said firmly. "You're abusing your authority, and this behavior will have consequences." Mitchell slammed his hand against the roof of her car, the sharp sound echoing through the quiet street. Rebecca remained still, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. She could see the anger building in his face, the kind of anger that came from feeling challenged by someone he considered beneath him. "Do you know who you're talking to?" he barked. "I'm the one in charge here. You're just another stopped driver. And if you don't comply, I'll make sure you regret it." Rebecca's gaze didn't waver. "You might want to rethink that," she said evenly. "This isn't just about me. Your actions tonight could ruin your career." Mitchell let out a bitter laugh, his confidence unshaken. "My career?" he scoffed. "You really think I care about what you have to say?" He stepped back, his hand brushing against his weapon. "This is your last warning. Hand over your ID, or I won't hesitate to use force." Rebecca's pulse quickened. But she knew this was a defining moment. Fear might have been an instinctive response, but she refused to let it control her. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for her phone, holding it up where Mitchell could see. "What are you doing?" Mitchell demanded, suspicion lacing his voice. Rebecca pressed a number on speed dial, her movements calm and deliberate. "Calling someone who outranks you," she said simply, lifting the phone to her ear. The line connected almost immediately. "This is Rebecca Carter," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "I'm being detained unlawfully by a police officer. I need the sheriff's presence at my location immediately." Mitchell's confidence faltered, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across his face. "Who are you calling?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. Rebecca didn't answer directly. Instead, she relayed her location to the person on the other end of the line. "Thank you," she said before ending the call. She turned her attention back to Mitchell, her expression resolute. "The sheriff will be here shortly. I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." Mitchell's bravado began to crumble, though his hand lingered near his weapon. His face flushed with a mix of anger and uncertainty. "This isn't over," he muttered, his tone less certain now. Rebecca remained calm, her resolve unshaken. She had been here before, standing against those who believed they were untouchable, those who used their positions of power to demean and intimidate. This was not just about her personal dignity, it was about a principle. About challenging a system that allowed men like Mitchell to act with impunity. In the distance, the piercing red and blue lights of another vehicle appeared, growing brighter as they approached. Relief mixed with a renewed sense of purpose as Rebecca watched the sheriff's SUV pull up to the roadside. This was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. The sheriff's arrival would shift the dynamic entirely, and Rebecca was determined to ensure this moment was not forgotten. It wasn't just a confrontation between her and Mitchell anymore, it was a battle against the deeply ingrained injustice that had plagued countless others. As the sheriff stepped out of his vehicle, Rebecca knew the fight for accountability and justice had only just begun. The hum of the sheriff's approaching vehicle cut through the tense silence like a blade. Rebecca Carter sat motionless in her SUV, her posture poised yet firm, as Officer Mitchell stood rigid nearby, his hand still hovering close to his holstered weapon. The flashing lights of the sheriff's car illuminated the scene, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. The balance of power was about to shift. The sheriff's SUV came to a halt, and a man stepped out with an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. Sheriff Daniel Hernandez, a tall, middle-aged man with a weathered face that spoke of decades in law enforcement, surveyed the scene with sharp, assessing eyes. His expression was a mix of disbelief and irritation as he took in Mitchell's aggressive stance and Rebecca's composed demeanor. "Mitchell," Hernandez called out, his voice firm and commanding. "What the hell is going on here?" Officer Mitchell stiffened, his shoulders square as he turned to face his superior. "Sir," he began, his voice unsteady but still clinging to a veneer of authority. "This woman refused to cooperate. She wouldn't show me her ID. And she's being—" "Lower your tone and holster your weapon," Hernandez interrupted sharply, his eyes narrowing. The quiet command carried the weight of experience, and Mitchell's hand hesitated before he reluctantly let it fall away from his belt. Hernandez stepped closer, his gaze shifting to Rebecca. Hernandez said, his tone softening slightly as he addressed her. "Are you all right?" Rebecca nodded, her voice steady as she replied, "I'm fine, Sheriff Hernandez." But this officer's actions were not only inappropriate, they were unlawful. Hernandez's gaze lingered on her for a moment, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition dawned in his eyes, and his demeanor grew even more serious. "Director Carter," he asked quietly, almost in disbelief. "Rebecca Carter, Director of the FBI?" The color drained from Mitchell's face. He froze, his mouth opening as if to speak. But no words came out. His confidence, so unshakable moments ago, dissolved into visible panic. "Yes," Rebecca confirmed, her tone unyielding. "I am." A heavy silence blanketed the scene. Hernandez turned his attention back to Mitchell, his expression hardening. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded. "You stopped and harassed the director of the FBI without cause, pointed a weapon at her, and violated her rights. This is beyond unacceptable, it's a disgrace." Mitchell stammered, his voice faltering. Sir. I didn't know who she was. You were just abusing your authority. Rebecca interjected. Her voice sharp but controlled. It doesn't matter who I am. Your behavior tonight is a clear example of the systemic abuse that needs to end. Hernandez nodded, his jaw tightening. Mitchell, he said coldly, return to the station and write a full report on what happened here. I'll deal with you later. But, Mitchell began, only to be cut off by Hernandez's glare. No buts. Hernandez snapped. Go. Now. Defeated. Mitchell shot a final glance at Rebecca before turning stiffly and walking back to his patrol car. The sound of the car door slamming and the engine starting signaled his retreat. But the tension in the air remained heavy. Hernandez turned back to Rebecca, his expression apologetic. Director Carter, he said, his tone more respectful. I can't express how sorry I am for what happened tonight. This officer's behavior does not represent our department, and I'll ensure he's held accountable. Rebecca's gaze was steady as she replied. Thank you, Sheriff Hernandez. But this isn't just about me, it's about ensuring no one else has to endure what I just did. Hernandez nodded, a flicker of shame crossing his face. You have my word, he said. We'll conduct a full investigation and take the necessary action to prevent this from happening again. Rebecca studied him for a moment, her sharp eyes weighing his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. I trust you'll do the right thing. As Hernandez assured her once more of his intentions, Rebecca knew this was only the beginning. The confrontation that had unfolded on this quiet road was emblematic of a much larger problem. It wasn't just about one rogue officer, it was about a system that allowed such behavior to persist. The road ahead would be long and challenging. But Rebecca was determined to fight for justice. Tonight, she had stood her ground. And she wouldn't stop until accountability became the standard, not the exception. This was more than a personal battle, it was a cause worth fighting for. In the weeks following that night, Rebecca Carter's confrontation with Officer Mitchell became a symbol of resilience and the fight for justice. Her unwavering stance highlighted the importance of holding those in power accountable and inspired many to demand systemic change. Sheriff Hernandez followed through on his promise, implementing reforms to rebuild trust within his department, while Rebecca used her platform to advocate for broader national reforms. The incident was a stark reminder of the work still needed to combat injustice. But it also showcased the strength of courage, empathy, and determination in the face of adversity. Rebecca knew the fight was far from over. But she remained steadfast, determined to create a world where fairness and respect were not the exception but the rule. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful life stories that inspire and move hearts. See you in the next video.